Hi, class. Okay, we're going to take a quick look, hopefully it's quick, at Chapter 3, which covers consumer motivation and personality. The chapter is devoted primarily to the personality and motivation of the consumers themselves. However, it does spend a brief amount of time from the perspective of consumers' ideas of the personalities of brands, because we do view brands kind of in a anthropomorphic way. Sometimes we give them characteristics that we attribute to humans. One of the most obvious and easy to exemplify this is Mr. Clean, which we know, I do from childhood, of this strong man who helps women keep the house clean. And Mr. Clean is given all kinds of characteristics that manifest that image. He's a big, brawny, good-looking guy that women want to interact with, I think is the subliminal message. It's also important to know how we are motivated by our needs and the goals that we set as a consequence of those needs. And if I had you guys in class, well, if we went back to this figure real quickly, you can see that an ego need that a brand might attach to a particular product would be Nike for a shoe. But while that may be your dress shoe of choice in your 20s or 30s, you may replace that over time with a Gucci or something like that. Same with women's apparel needs. So we set goals to achieve or fulfill our needs, but again, they're two uh, separate but related things. And from a marketing perspective, you want to understand need satisfaction and the relationship to goal setting, and you want to have messages within your advertisements, your promotions of different kinds, your media selection that respond or resonate around needs and meeting a goal definition and then meeting those goals. So here's one. You can conquer the bar. It looks at basically two kinds of needs: goal setting uh, and the functional attachment to passing the bar, doing it through Kaplan. Don't be confused and interpret this that you're supposed to meet somebody at a bar named Kaplan and have a drink there. So marketers also need to understand that we have frustrations in meeting goals and in some cases defense mechanisms that we establish and have to impose on ourselves. So we might say, oh, I can't go to college because it's too expensive and I'm never going to get a raise. And so you develop uh, ads intended to affect consumers' behaviors around those frustrations and defense mechanisms that they set up, and you develop communications that specifically state to those kinds of frustrations and defense mechanisms, hopefully convincing the consumer that you can resolve those somehow. Uh, to which of Maslow's needs does this ad appeal? I'll give you 3 minutes to 5 seconds, or 3 seconds to 5 seconds of uncomfortable silence while you figure it out. And of course, there's physiological needs, which are the most basic, but it also mixes that with social needs. And so you find, as was my case with Nike, uh, you find marketing and promotional efforts that mix different needs. It's very common for marketing to take a very basic need like safety and security or something functional like clothing and try to attach a higher level need to it. That's marketing. So here we talk about a trio of needs: power, affiliation, and achievement. And power is just an individual desire to control your own, his or her environment, as well as a need to kind of control other people and various objects as well. And affiliation and achievement are really takeoffs of Maslow's needs, and they again have a social dimension to them around our need to have friends and be influenced by those friends and to influence those friends, um, and so on and so forth. So, personality is a driver of consumer behavior. So, we have many ways to define different personality traits and to put people into segments that are developed around personality characteristics. And obviously, as a consequence, we employ different messages and different media that specifically are intended to appeal to people or resonate with people with certain personality characteristics. There's a certain kind of person that likes reality TV, for example, just like there's a certain kind of person that likes produced game shows of one kind or another. So your book talks about um, three different ways to define theories of personality. One is the Freudian theory, where Freud said we really have three personalities going on inside of us that talk to one another. The first is the id, the naughty side. The rational side is your superego, uh, and then your ego is the side of you that people see. It thinks about the id, it thinks about the superego, and then it comes up with a rational um, balance between those. Neo-Freudian uh, suggests that social relationships are really fundamental to the formulation and development of a personality. So, factors involved in Neo-Freudian are culture and family and those kinds of things. And then trait theory is kind of a way to quantify different elements of uh, personality that might be affected actually by Freudian or Neo-Freudian um, catalysts. So you might say that a culture like the American culture is, uh, Hofstadter looked at this, might be more individualistic on a scale of 1 to 10 as a personality or characteristic of our culture than say the Japanese, which is more group oriented. So we can do that on an individual basis too. Uh, we can define ourselves through different personality traits. And at the end of the day, again, anymore with big data, you can define people's personalities pretty accurately based on different behaviors of one kind or another, as well as self-reporting, and put them into different groups of one kind or another, and then develop products or advertising that would appeal to them in some form or fashion. So uh, around Freudian, which most of you are aware, we see it all the time in one way or another in cartoons. Animal House has a great little segment around it, but it's your id and superego discussing what you should or shouldn't do with your rational side or your ego, which is ultimately manifested in what you consider to be your decided upon best behavior that's a balance between the two. And sometimes, obviously, you listen to one side more than the other, uh, and that's what makes us special. We have a lot of ads that appeal to the id in particular, but also if you think about the Kaplan one earlier, it appeals to the superego, the more rational side of different decisions in life that we're forced, in most cases, to make. Innovativeness is a personality trait. And if you take the VALS, Values and Lifestyles survey online, if you've taken one of my classes, you should have taken it unless you skipped the assignment. But Values and Lifestyles uh, will put you into 8 different categories. You can Google it, VALS, VALS, or Values and Lifestyles, and you can kind of see which of the which of the 2 of the 8 categories they put you into, and one of those is innovativeness. And people with this kind of personality, uh, well, read it. Other personality characteristics: visualizers, verbalizers. I'm a visualizer. Show me how to do it. I don't want to read a manual. Materialism, ethnocentrism. Materialism really is around an individual's need or want to purchase things that show off his physical possessions. So it's sort of that Maslow's need for recognition or achievement. Ethnocentric is seeing the world from your viewpoint or your culture. So people that are ethnocentric would probably not want to buy. Well, it reflects whether or not they're willing or not willing to buy, let's say, foreign-made products. If you are an immigrant, you may have a propensity for your prior ethnic, let's say, foods, whereas if you were born and raised in this country, even if you're defined by a minority ethnicity, you still may have an ethnocentric view of what constitutes um, traditional food, American food, versus what's not. So again, it's just seeing it from your cultural perspective. Uh, Brand personality framework. Uh, Brands, we go back to that original slide of Mr. Clean, and brands have their own personality, and they, in short, may have a personality developed around individual characteristics like sincerity, excitement, competence, efficacy, functionality, so on and so forth.